I'm just going to read from the very first chapter of the book, and then I'll talk a little bit about the book, and then we can do Q&A. Does that sound good with everyone? I'm not going to go long. I like to just get in and out. I like to. You think you want to hear it, but you really don't want to hear it. You know, you'd rather talk. I know how it goes. So, has everyone here at least familiar with what the book is about, or should I explain what the book is about to everyone? Right? Okay. I'm just going to read the first chapter. This is Edie at 62 pounds. Yeah. How could she not feed their daughter? Little Edie Herzen, age 5, not so little. Her mother had noticed this. How could she miss it? Her arms and legs, once peachy and soft, had blossomed into something that surpassed luscious. They were disarmingly solid. A child should be squeezable. She was a cement block of flesh. She breathed too heavy, like someone's gassy old uncle after a meal. She hated taking the stairs. She begged to be carried up the 4 flights to their apartment. Her mother, aching, her back, the groceries, a bag of books from the library. I'm tired, said Edie. We're all tired, said her mother. Come on, help me out here. She handed Edie the bag of books. You pick these out. You carry them. Her mother, not so thin herself, nearly 6 feet tall, with a powerhouse of a body, she was a lioness who had a shimmer and a roar to her thick, majestic self. She believed she was a queen among women. Still, she was damp, and she had a headache, and the stairs weren't fun, she agreed. Her husband, Edie's father, always took the stairs 2 at once in a hurry to get to the next place. He was tall, with a thick head of dark, spongy hair, and had long, lanky, pale limbs, and his chest was so thin it was practically translucent, his ribs protruding, watery blue veins threaded throughout. After they made love, she would lazily watch the skin that covered his heart bob up and down, fast, slower, slow. At meals, he ate and ate. He was carnal, primal about food. He staked out territory, leaning forward on the table, one arm resting around his plate, the other dishing the food into his mouth, not stopping to chew or breathe, but he never gained a pound. He had starved on his long journey from Ukraine to Chicago 8 years before and had never been able to fill himself up since. When you looked at all the things in the world there were to agree upon, they had so little in common, this husband and wife. He was not a patriot. America had always been her home. She was more frivolous than he with money because to her, living in this vast, rich country in the healthy city of Chicago, it always felt as if more money could be made. They went to separate synagogues, he to the one favored by the Russian immigrants, she to the one founded by Germans 2 generations earlier, where her parents had gone before they had died, the synagogue in which she had grown up, and she could not let that go, not even in this new union. He had more secrets, had seen more hardships. She had only watched it on the news, and he would always carry his daughter Edie wherever she wanted to go, on his shoulders, high up in the sky, as close to God as he could get her. And she was absolutely certain that Edie should be walking everywhere by now. But they agreed about how to have sex with each other any way they wanted, no judgment allowed, and how often, nightly at least, and they agreed that food was made of love and was what made love, and they could never deny themselves a bite of anything they desired, and if Edie, their beloved, big-eyed, already sharp-witted daughter, was big for her age, it did not matter, because how could they not feed her? Little Edie Herzen, having a bad day, was making the slowest walk up a flight of stairs in the collective history of walking and stairs, until she decided she could not take another step. It was hot in the stairwell, the dusty air overheated by a skylight above, and when Edie finally sat, throwing the bag of books on the floor next to her, the sweat squished down the backs of her thighs onto the stairs. Edie, Bubala, don't start. It's too hot, she said. Hot, tired, carry me. With what hands? Where's Daddy? He could carry me. What is wrong with you today? Edie didn't mean to be a baby about it. She was not a whiner. She just wanted to be carried. She wanted to be carried and cuddled and fed salty liverwurst and red onion on warm rye bread. She wanted to read and talk and laugh and watch television and listen to the radio. And at the end of the day, she wanted to be tucked into bed and kissed goodnight by one or both of her parents. It did not matter which, for she loved them both equally. She wanted to watch the world around her go by and make up stories in her head about everything she saw and sing all the little songs they taught her in Sunday school and count as high as she could possibly count, which was currently over 1,000. There was so much to be observed and considered. Why did she need to walk? She missed her buggy and sometimes would pull it out of the storage closet and study it wistfully. She would have loved to be pushed around forever like a princess in a carriage surveying her kingdom, preferably one with a magical forest with tiny dancing elves in it. Elves who had their own deli where they only sold liverwurst. Her mother shifted the groceries in her damp arms. She could smell something sour and realized it was herself, and then a massive rivulet of sweat shot from her armpit down her arm, and she tried to wipe her arm against the bag, and then the bag began to turn, and she reached out for it with the other arm, and then the other bag began to fall, and she hunched over and held them close, trying to rest the bags on the tops of her thighs, but it did not matter. The groceries at the top of both bags spilled out, first the loaf of bread, the greens, the tomatoes landing on Edie's head, and then 2 large cans of beans on Edie's fingertips. Little Edie Herzen, lioness in training, already knew how to roar. Her mother dropped the bags to the floor. She grabbed her daughter. She held her against her. She squeezed her, wondering again why Edie was already so solid, so hard. She shushed her baby girl, the guilt boiling in her stomach like an egg in hot water, a lurching sensation between wanting her daughter to stop crying already. She was going to be fine in 5 minutes, 5 years, 50 years. She would not even remember this pain, and wanting to cry herself, because she knew she would never forget the time she dropped 2 cans of beans on her daughter's fingers. "Let me see them," she said to Edie, who was howling and shaking her head at the same time, holding her hands tight against her. "We won't know if you're all right if I can't look at them." The howling and the hiding of the hands went on for a while. Neighbors opened their doors and stuck their heads into the hallway and closed them when they saw it was just that fat child from 60, being a kid, crying like they do. Edie's mother coddled and begged. The ice cream was melting. One nail was going to turn blue and fall off a week later, and if she thought Edie was hollering now, she hadn't heard anything, but no one knew that yet. There would be new scars, although there would be a lifetime of scars ahead for Edie in one way or another, but no one knew that yet either. Her mother sat there with her arm around her daughter until she did the only thing left she could do. She reached behind them on the floor and grabbed the loaf of rye bread, still warm in its wrapping paper, baked not an hour before at Schiller's down on 53rd Street. Pulled off a hunk of it, handed it to her daughter, who ignored her, and continued to sob, unforgiving, a tiny mean bone having just been formed. "Good," said her mother, "more for me." How long do you think it took before Edie turned her head and stuck her trembling hand out for food, her mouth hanging open expectantly yet drowsily like a newborn bird, rye to her mouth, wishing there were liverwurst, dreaming of elves? How long until she revealed her other hand, pink and purple and blue, the edges of her index fingers nail bloody, to her mother, until her mother covered her hand with kisses? Food was made of love, and love was made of food, and if it could stop a child from crying, then there was nothing wrong with that either. "Carry me," Edie said, and this time her mother could no longer deny her. Up the stairs, 4 flights, the bag of library books strapped around her neck, only slightly choking her, while one arm held 2 bags of groceries, and the other held her beloved daughter, Edie. Yay. Done. I got to read from it in the fall, but we'll just pretend like it's some significant gesture that I just made there. So the book is about, I'm going to answer the question that everyone always asks first, which is, why did you decide to write about food? Because I could have written about Edie having a problem with drugs. Okay, so everyone has read it, so we can talk about stuff, so spoilers are okay. Is that all right? Is that cool? Okay. So why did you choose to write about why didn't you write about drugs? Why didn't you write about cigarettes? Why didn't you write about alcohol? And I have had characters in past books who've had problems with those things. And in this book, actually, characters have some issues, different issues with drugs and alcohol. But the most interesting thing about food is, if you quit those other things, you never have to do them again. But if you have a complicated relationship with food, and this is on either end of the spectrum, you have to face it every single day of your life. 3 meals a day, 4 meals a day. I mean, I have a late afternoon snack. I don't know if that's a meal, but, something like that. So that, to me, as a writer, was it was a very rich source material from the get-go. I also find food really interesting because it is a life cycle. It's kind of associated with life cycle events, and there are life cycle events in the book. But if you think about going to a wedding or a funeral, in my household when I was growing up, if we had relatives that were coming and visiting from out of town, we didn't have a lot of good deli that was nearby. We actually had to drive like 45 minutes. And I remember my dad, if we had family in town, it was like, you're going to drive. He's going to get up on a Sunday morning. He's going to drive 45 minutes. He's going to go get the deli. He's going to bring it home. And that's how you know somebody that you love, a family member, is in town. So there's a lot of things that are associated with food in that way. I mean, I always think when someone tells me that they just went to a wedding, I always ask, how was the food? Because I want to know, how was the food? So it's really a part of life, and in that, not just in your daily life, but also like in your bigger memories of life. I think that people get judged really easily in this country based on their physical appearance. So I wanted to, again, on either end of the spectrum. So I wanted to write about that. I wanted to write about food because I really love food. I think about it a lot. I think about it because I'm at home by myself all the time, and I like, what am I going to eat next? You know, like there's the kitchen right there. But also I actually I really love food, and I think that in this country, I can't really speak to other countries, but in this country, I think that we sometimes get a combative relationship with our food. And so when you do sit down to eat it, and you are always counting the calories or thinking about it, and we should not really blame the food, I think. It's sort of what we do with the food. So that's kind of a starting point for it. I did get asked today, I did a Skype book club with a library, and they were like, why does she eat that much? Why does she do it? And you know, there's a lot of reasons. All the chapters that are about her in the book really kind of identify, not in a clinical way, hopefully, but just sort of go through like all the possible reasons that build you, you know, like build up to a person becoming 350 pounds. So I feel like all the answers are there. And you don't want to fall into a position of over-explaining your work. So that's really the big first question that I get asked. I also get asked, you know, just sort of why I wrote it in general. I read a book called Kitteridge. I don't know if you guys have read that or not. It's a wonderful book. It actually won the Pulitzer Prize. It's probably around here somewhere, right? You could buy it on your way out. There's so many books here you could buy on the way out. We'll talk about books you can buy before I leave. And so it's a really beautiful book that's set in a small town in New England, and it has stories that sort of span different generations, but it's all surrounded by this woman, Kitteridge, and I felt like I could write that about where I grew up. I'd never written really about where I'd grown up before. I had to not live there for about 20 years in order to be able to look back on it and want to be able to write about it from a place of compassion and trying to understand it. So that was the initial inspiration behind it, was that book. And then I started hearing, and then maybe 6 months after that, for me, it's like a really weird, not every writer says this, but a lot of writers say it. Like, I'm not a concept person first. I'm like a character. It's very character driven. So the second chapter in the book, which is the Robin chapter, was the first voice that I heard in my head, where I just heard somebody bitching about having to take care of their sick parent. Because nobody wants to take care. I mean, like, is anyone like, yay, I get to take care of my sick parent? No, I mean, it's a really complicated thing. So that was the first voice that I heard in the book, and then everyone started to populate the book. And I wanted to write. I guess I wanted to write about my hometown. So then I just started hearing the characters' voices talking to me. I always sound like a crazy person when I say that, but it is true. And then I was interested in writing about faith. You know, I just saw a review from Christianity Today about this book, which made me really happy. And it is that it's sort of crossing, like it's not just a Jewish book that's crossing all these. Because I didn't sit down, I wasn't thinking I'm writing a Jewish book. I would not describe myself necessarily as someone who's particularly active in my faith. But I did grow up Jewish, and one of the things that I've realized in writing this book and all the touring that I've done is that it's something that's kind of inherent, you know, kind of my friend Rosie says, once you're Jewish, you can't go back. So, and it's been wonderful that it's been embraced by the Jewish community, but it was really cool to get the chance to explore different generations' relationship with their faith in it.
So I'm Carol, and we read this in my book club, and we loved it. And in fact, the second I was done with it, I went out and got The Kept Man, which is the next book. But your language was just, I have a comment and then a question. Your language was just so evocative. I mean, you started sending all these emails. I'm going to have to send out for Chinese as soon as I'm done with this. Someone else said, I've already ordered. I mean, your language, we just wanted everything you were talking about. It just was such beautiful language.
Thank you.
But my question is, why could Robin never forgive her father?
I don't know, because people screw up. I don't know. I mean, the point, sometimes you show that you write the wrong thing to kind of show the right thing. Do you know what I mean? And I know there's so many people, and I've certainly held grudges in my life, and I didn't know how to, I just didn't see her as a character forgiving him. And that's why I wrote the ending the way that I did, because I wanted one character to sort of express forgiveness in it to show how it was possible. but she was bitter. She had the mean bone in her, like, from the get-go. Sometimes you kind of have that. The other thing I want to say about the Chinese food thing is that a lot of people say to me, is it weird that I was hungry after reading this book? And it's not weird, because I made all the foods. I wrote food that I wanted to
We all just wanted to keep eating Chinese food.
Yeah. And the other thing is that when I do readings in in the town that I grew up in, or kind of nearby in the suburbs, everyone's like, where is that restaurant? I'm like, it doesn't exist, because there's no good Chinese in the suburbs of Chicago. So I do a lot, sometimes you write things into existence because you want to see what they look like or what it would be like. So anyway, thank you.
Hi, I'm Jeff. I loved every chapter, but I was most intrigued by the seating chart chapter, because you collectively had all the families speak from their point of view. Could you talk about what inspired you to do that and your reasoning for doing that? Well, otherwise, I have to speculate.
No. I mean, they were definitely chattering at me the entire book. And I was like, you do not fit into this scheme at all. Like, you don't belong here. Like, I really just want family members only. You know what I mean? Like a closed session. And then when I got to that chapter, I was like, all right, let me just see what you have to say about it. Like, it's very, for me, writing is very playful. It's very joyful. There's a lot of annoying things that go along with it too, but the actual writing of it is really, it's a really fun time for me. So I sat down, and as soon as I started writing it, I was like, oh, it's like pulling back. It's like a wide view perspective. Like, if you sent in any other family member to do that job, you would not have gotten that same vision of it. And I think it really sets everything kind of in relief in the book. To me, they're a Jewish-Greek chorus. It was the hardest chapter to write because I'd just never done it before. It was awesome to write it, but I was like, this is really, like I wrote it, and in the middle of it I was thinking about, and then we came to the end, the Josh Ferris book, and I was like, damn, Josh, I can't believe you wrote that whole book like that way. Like, I guess once you get into it, though, you sort of know how it works. But I saw them very clearly in my head, and it felt like it was there was something, it felt like a fireworks when I was writing it. It was you don't always get to have that when you're a writer. Like, it was a very exciting moment to write it, but I thought they're going to tell the truth in a different way, and then they became their own story. Very bittersweet. And then most of it I wrote in a very linear way. I didn't have to go back and add a lot in, but with them, I was like, I got to identify. I went back and added it in just to make sure that they were there. But they were really, they feel like the community, like a collective voice of the community where I grew up, more than I could see them really clearly. That was fun. That was really fun. Okay, good question.
You.
I love talking about that because it was so much fun to write it. It should be fun, writing. It's not, I know, sometimes, but it should be at least exciting to you.
Do you ever find that people have reduced the novel just to a woman with food issues? Because there's so much more to this book than that. That's a symptom, but it's not the main part of the book. I think there's all these other factors and all these other things going on too. It seems like everybody that refers to it says it's about a woman has food issues.
Unless you talk to the Jews, because the Jews think it's their book. And and when I do Jewish, I'll do like big Jewish country clubs or big Jewish book clubs and stuff like that, and there'll be like a couple hundred women in the room, and they're like, how do people who aren't Jewish even read this book? How do they even don't they understand that it's like our people or whatever? I honestly, like, whatever it takes to like get a headline at this point, like if that's what they need to do to summarize the book, and it's not a bad conversation to be having. I don't know, it's a family, the Middlesteins, not Edie. So, but it's whatever. People can read it, and whatever you want to get out of it, you can get out of it. Not for me to tell people how to read. I don't believe in guilty pleasures. I just want to do my like guilty pleasure spiel, because everyone's like, "Oh, what's your guilty pleasure? This or that." I'm like, whatever you enjoy, just read it. At least you're reading something. So.
I'm going to come over here because I'm not going to break my own rule and not use the microphone.
Okay.
But you said that you don't really think a lot about structure, but you keep bringing up structure over and over again. Is it starting to seep in your consciousness more now that you have to talk about the book a lot?
I'm trying to learn about it. I'm trying to get there. I mean, I wrote like just the family stuff in the book, and then I read the corrections, which I'd never read before, which is like so amazing with the structure. And I was like, oh, like, because I was so character driven in my work, because that's all I cared about was character and voice forever and ever. And then I was like, oh, he did. That's why his book was it meant something to so many people because there was a lot of reasons why, but that structure is so genius, and I learned so much of it. And now I'm really like a structure addict. Like I'm so into it because I can see, like hopefully I'm not overdoing it with the new book that I'm working on, but I'm like really like, it's so cool. Like when you can play with it, and but I'll always be, emotional truth is like my main priority always. But structure, I don't know if it makes it more interesting or hooky or addictive to the reader. I think go for it. Yeah.
Just from listening to you read the first chapter, it sounds like you're really planting the seed for a relationship with food that's some sort of transference or almost a substitution for emotion. So particularly in Jewish culture, and how do you see that coming through and affecting your book, this kind of relationship with food as a substitute or a transfer for certain emotions?
I mean, that's definitely like part of it for sure, is like from a really early age, like a lot of people are like, here's something we can put in your mouth so you'll stop crying. It's also something that's like, we're going to celebrate. Like you can have like, basically anything could involve food if you really want it to, and it doesn't, but that's not all of it, but that's some of it. And it's not in this chapter, I think it's like a later chapter. And I don't want to do like the weird thing where I quote myself, and don't worry, I can't at this point because I wrote it so long ago. But it's something about how food, and she loses track of food and emotions. Like it just becomes one big thing. So instead of, you know what I mean? So like everything gets attached to it. At some point she knew what the distinction was, why she was eating. And then as she gets older, she just doesn't know anymore. Like it's all just kind of there. I check myself, like I can see when I'm like, I can tell when there's different things. I really connected with her. I'm not her, but I really like get like when you forget why, you're just like, that's an answer. That's the easiest answer. It's right there.
But I was wondering if you could talk a little bit about writing this book versus your other books. You're talking about the different point of view, but then also this is your last event in your paperback tour. Congratulations. Thanks. What going forward you're taking from this experience? I mean, the Middlesteins was hugely successful. We all enjoyed it so much, and I was just wondering if you could talk a little bit about that.
Okay. So this experience, I think it was different because sounds really weird. Even though there's nobody in this book that's like a real person, like I didn't feel like I had to invent a lot. Like I just knew it. It was like already there, kind of ingrained in me. And I wanted to write something that felt bigger for sure, which I kind of just was scribbling and writing and like bleeding on the page. And I still was bleeding on the page with this, but I really thought it was the first time I was a little bit more strategic about what could make it feel bigger. And the thing that to me made it feel bigger was the Edie chapters that sort of span time, that they sort of like provide an architecture for the book that had it just all been in current, the year 2010, which is when it mostly is set, I think it would have been good, but it would have felt smaller. And all my other books are set in a really tight time frame for the most part. Instant Love, my first book, has a little bit more, it spans more time. So that was kind of it was the first time that I thought, well, how can I make this big? And also I really wanted to write a very American book. Because I'm an American. I know I live in New York, I live in Brooklyn, where all the writers live, but I'm really an American writer. And I think about I drive cross country a lot. I'm interested in America and reflecting what's going on there. Okay, so that was probably it. And also it was just cool that people actually like that you're all here is really amazing, because I've had readings where no one comes for my last couple of books, so it's very hard. So it's when no one cares. So thank you for caring and reading it and being here and talking about it in book clubs and everything like that. I love book clubs very, very much. So that experience is different. What I've learned from touring, and especially like the other day I looked at my calendar and I had done 52 events in a year, which is insane. And that's like not counting book clubs. Like I Skype into book clubs, I Skype into library, like all that kind of stuff. That's not counting doing interviews about the book or any of the social, like it's literally just the 52 public events that I did in a year. I'm not even sure how I am coming out on the other side. I mean, I'm good, like I'm cool, but I like, but like, I'm not sure like how it's really changed me. It's definitely forced me to have better manners because I keep meeting new people every day, all the time. I mean, literally, if you do 52 events in a year, even if you're not doing it every week, when I had my paperback tour, I did 4 events on the road, then I did 3 events in New York, and then I did 4 or 5 events actually. And I went, and then you go to bookstores and you sign books and you meet people. So you're just, I mean, I don't remember names. I'm really sorry. I remember yours, because we like each other. But we're friends on Twitter. But it's real, like it's just meeting like tons of new people. People share stories with you, which is really, I can't tell you how many like amazing, beautiful, sad, emotional stories that I've heard because people read the book and they feel that they are connected with it, and it's great to be able to hear all those stories. So my whole universe, my whole world has like really expanded in this really beautiful but very emotional kind of way. And there's just times like, well, I'll come home, not sound like a huge baby, but like sometimes I'll come home and I'll just be like a little weepy from it because it's just a lot. It's just a lot. It's not a burden, but it is like there's a physical thing that's going on. But that's great that people feel things about it. Like the best thing that you hope for from your art, right? Like the most you could hope for is that people feel something out of it or connect with it. So that's been really great. And I'm not done yet because it's coming out in a bunch of countries in Europe. So it's like we're still Middlesteins. Middlesteins, like, but it's so small in comparison. I have some friends who've like written books that have sold like 1 million copies. So it's very small in comparison. But
do you think all those experiences, they must in some way affect your writing now?
Yeah, I mean, the thing that I'm working on next, I'd already thought about it, so it's just a place I think I'm at in my life, but it is interesting to know that you'll have an audience, a bigger audience going in than I had for, at least it'll get reviewed, that kind of thing. Like, I think it'll be really interesting to see how it goes. Thanks.